Things are just getting more and more difficult for the Montreal Canadiens while Cole Caufield scores his 31st and Lane Hutson gets another point, upping Joel Armia's trade value in the process. The Montreal Canadiens still seemingly lack that big number 2 center to really help drive them into a playoff spot, and with the trade deadline looming, there are more reports, including ones coming from Pierre Lebrun, indicating Montreal may be making more moves than we expected. We have to dive into this game, what it means for the deadline, what it means for the Habs going forward, and all the latest reports, all of that on this episode of Habs Digest. And we'll start with the game as always. Actually, we'll get to that LeBron quote in a bit. Maybe you can pause and get a little spoiler, but no, you want to stick around. I know that. Thank you to you for watching, by the way. It's midnight Eastern time, and you're watching this video. I appreciate that. So feel free to pause, take a look at the box score. Look, not going to dwell on this game too much. There were some good moments. The Montreal Canadiens looked like they were equal to the Oilers for a lot of this game. The first period was great. Second period, not so great. Third, whatever. But in overtime, Montreal looked to be the better team for sure. But what happens is you're ended by Connor McDavid, and it just was an arrow through the heart with Bouchard scoring that goal because of how poorly he played in overtime. Craig Button, if you guys watched that English broadcast, Craig Button was having a time just chewing people out this whole game. He is not like Evan Bouchard. Anyway, that aside, neither Matthias Janmark. Look, at this point in this game, David Savard, 7 block shots. Mike Matheson logging 31 minutes time on ice. There's a lot to like about this game. Again, we'll roll the highlights again. Jake Evans played a very solid game. Some great chances in OT. Caufield proving his worth once again. And this rush from Lane Hutson, honestly, was absolutely unbelievable. Giving it to Joel Armia. But right now, like as we look towards the playoffs, this 1 point was absolutely crucial for Montreal, staying just 1 point out on a night where a lot of other playoff teams, or well, prospective playoff teams lost their games. Montreal needed to get at least one to stay in that hunt. But the more you look at this, the more it's like, man, this is cutting it down to the wire. And I'm seeing a lot of talk out there tonight saying like, the secondary scoring just isn't really there. Montreal can play a good team game, but there's moments in the game where that first line just has to take over, or maybe even the fourth line has to have a good forechecking shift, because there's stretches where you just get basically nothing. And while you look at the game here now, Carrier and Matheson were the 2 most impactful players, then Caufield, Suzuki, Armia getting a goal, of course, upping there. But like, the depth play, none of these guys are getting crazy high game scores. A game score 1, like that's one of the big problems with Montreal right now. So as we're heading towards the deadline and we hear a lot of talk about how Montreal's looking for a 2C of the future, I'm seeing a lot of fans say, hey, is this the time? Do we push for it right now? My immediate answer is don't rush it. Don't rush getting a 2C just because we don't like the results from these games. Now, again, a 5-game win streak followed by an OT loss, getting 11 points in 6 games is amazing, right? And it's keeping Montreal right here in this playoff push. I'm not saying this loss is indicative that Montreal needs to make a big move, but we are seeing the weaknesses of this roster. Owen Beck is great, and I think he's been playing very well at the NHL level, but he's not elevating his line mates. I thought Newhook had a really good game tonight. Line was fine, just fine. Again, he, not the Dumoulin thing, he didn't play a ton tonight. Again, geez, 10 minutes for Patrick Laine. That's what I'm saying. Like 10 minutes for Laine, 8 minutes for Beck. And that's your second line. Newhook getting about 12 minutes, and he was clearly the best of those 3 tonight. I mean, I have no doubts about it. Owen Beck 0 for 2 on the faceoffs. That line as a whole only took 3 faceoffs this entire game. They're really not being relied upon. And when you can't rely upon your second line, which has arguably your best goal scorer, I think it still is Caufield instead of Laine. But look, Laine has some incredible shots. One of your best goal scorers, at least, in Patrick Laine. That's a problem you need to fix. And look, I know Kirby Dach is now injured, and he could have been that guy, wasn't showing it. That's a problem that needs to be addressed soon. Will it happen before the deadline? I don't necessarily think so, but I wouldn't be surprised if Montreal did make some kind of move to shake it up. Now, today, look, we've heard a lot of talk about the Jets being interested in Joel Armia, and look, him just being an interesting person for a lot of different teams, scoring a goal tonight, blocking 3 shots as well. The base bar is broken right there. Let's see if we can fix that. And it's back. That's fine. But yeah, like Armia up in his value, and it's like, man, I don't know. It was an interesting day, but when it comes to a certain player in David Savard, there was actually a report from Pierre Lebrun that came out just before the game talking about this, and he said, hey, the Winnipeg Jets are actually interested in David Savard. And I'll bring up the full quote for you here. Let's pop it up on the screen. He said, I think the Habs are waiting to see on Armia on Savard, and our team's going to circle back and pay a certain price tag, which I think is a 2nd-round pick. And even there, the Habs are still in a playoff race. They may say, I don't know, so we'll see. Very true. Montreal, again, is in this playoff race. They get that crucial point in Edmonton, and Savard is playing a key role. Like, Savard and Armia showed as much for other teams looking to trade for them as they did show their importance for the Montreal Canadiens down the stretch. I still don't think I trade Savard. I don't think it makes sense. I think he's too important to this team. I would not move him for a second rounder. You talk first rounder, then maybe I'm biting. But again, like the trade earlier with Brian Dumoulin, it's like, even at 50% retained, I'm not sold you'll get any more than a conditional second for David Savard. For Armia, who knows? Probably something similar. And again, with the plethora of draft picks Montreal has going forward, the more the talks are escalating, the more I'm hearing Savard's name, especially after this game, and people talking about Montreal needs to ship out players to patch these holes in their lineup. I'm like, I don't know. My mind's like, hold your horses. Make the push with the team this year. But there is no strict rush to be a playoff team this year. Go back to the start of the year and say, look, if we were in the mix, that would be great. We are in the mix. There's 20 games left in the season, and we're 1 point out of a playoff spot. You say that at the beginning of the season, fans would be thrilled. Would be like, this is amazing. The development's coming along exactly how we wanted. Not to mention the fact our top prospect, Ivan Demidov, is the best prospect outside of the NHL. And yes, Reinbacher got hurt, but since coming back, he's looked like one of the best players on the Laval Rocket. Everything has gone so well for Montreal this year. I say no rush in patching this 2C hole, but it is something that is becoming more and more evident day after day. Like, look, Stuart Skinner, if he didn't have such a great game today, Montreal could have easily won this game, especially in that first period. But, like, there's a lot of questions ringing out, and we're seeing some trades around the league, like, prices to get certain players, especially talented players, is getting high. Like, there was a trade today, the Minnesota Wild. They traded two youngish players, Marat Huznadinov and Jacob Lauko, to Boston for the 6'5", 6'6" Justin Brazeau, who has 10 goals this year, right? Like, teams are paying crazy prices. We're hearing, like, JJ Peterka's name thrown around, Alex Lafreniere. Like, there is so much going on. So with all these guys getting moved to new teams, even Brock Nelson right before the recording of this video getting shipped off to Colorado, teams are going to be coming knocking for these players as it's getting down to the deadline. The big names are starting to come off the board. Rantanen still, whatever, we don't know. But as these big names keep coming off, you have to imagine the prices are increasing and increasing for Montreal's players, and Kent Hughes is going to have to make a choice at some point. And again, I think that line between a second and a first is that line where you debate if you want to move these guys. Don't forget, we've had guys like Ben Sherratt go for firsts in the past. It's not crazy to think that a team could come knocking, be desperate, say, I think, look, I just want to win now, like the Lightning did, say, I don't even care. If we have a legit shot to win, I'm willing to do it. Hey, the Leafs still haven't made a move. I'm sure we'd charge a tax on them. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts on everything down below. This is going to be an exciting deadline, but if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And also, don't forget to check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as we're now on there as well for your listening pleasure. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. We'll catch you tomorrow. It's going to be a busy one.